What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back to another video. Just like last week, we're talking about second-year players. This week, we're talking about running backs. Today, we'll go over my favorite second-year running backs. Start things off with Jahmyr Gibbs. My year two model is projecting a spike of 17.7 points per game, either this year or next year from Gibbs. That would be top 5 running back production. He is certainly not cheap. So this is not a player that, I'm in love with, the model's in love with, and we can get them in round 3, 4, 5. He's coming off the board in any format around the 1-2 turn in a 12-team league. So he's going to come off the board in that pick like 9 to 15 range, right? But even in that range, he has significant upside. And he's also a great combination of one of the safest picks you can make. You just know that he's going to be highly productive in fantasy, combined with that significant upside. Like a lot of people, you have to pick one or the other. I think the wildest stat that I've seen for schedules this season is with the Lions. They, of course, play in a dome. So right off the bat, you're getting half your games in the dome. That's awesome. But look at their road games this season. Start off with at Arizona, that's in a dome. Then at Dallas, dome again. The Vikings, dome again. At Green Bay, in week 9 is the first time they play outdoors. But then it's back indoors at the Texans in week 10. Back indoors at the Colts in week 12. They play one game outside in the first 15 weeks of the season. Unfortunately, they do have 2 outdoor games in weeks 16 and 17. Both those games are at the Bears and then at San Fran, but those are still 2 what we hope to be, what we think will be high-end offenses, so should be games that Gibbs is needed as a pass catcher. Also, if you're going to play outdoors, at San Fran's not a bad spot to be playing in. We're not predicting bad weather in that game. So virtually every single week this season, this explosive Lions offense is also going to be playing indoors. And with them already talking about expanding Jahmyr Gibbs' role on the offense, he truly does have the upside to be the #1 running back in fantasy this season. I have not been hesitating at all taking him at the tail end of round 1. He's in a sweet spot too, right? He always goes behind Breece Hall and Bijan Robinson, but ahead of JT and Barkley. He's kind of in a tier of his own right there. But to be honest, if you had me make the case for Gibbs ahead of Breece Hall, ahead of Bijan, it's not like overly difficult to do. It's not overly difficult to think that, Bijan, who we haven't seen yet be highly productive in fantasy, just isn't, right? They just don't give him that featured role over Algier. And that Breece Hall, with these billion dump-offs last season, well, maybe with competent quarterback play, they are actually pushing the ball downfield. Maybe those dump-offs come way, way, way back, and that's why, not the only reason he's productive, but why he was highly productive at times, getting all of those dump-offs. So you can see a world where the Lions offense is just really good, as they were last season, that Gibbs' role expands, the touchdowns go up, the receptions go up, and he's just a monster in fantasy, playing basically every single game in a dome in a high-scoring game. So a phenomenal pick. I really think, especially if you want to go like running back, wide receiver, you're in that general turn, it's incredible being able to go with Bijan and then your top-ranked wide receiver after that. Great, great, great player to take at that spot. Second, year 2 running back that I like a lot is Kendre Miller. He was taken 71st overall by the Saints in last year's draft. My model projects him very similarly, my prospect model, so how good you are going to be within your first few years in the NFL, projects him very similarly to Jonathan Brooks, at least again in terms of that career fantasy production over the first 4 years of their career. Miller didn't do all that much as a rookie, but that was just because of injuries, right? Winning at Combine, Dana, because he was kind of hurt at that point. And then he misses part of the preseason with a hamstring injury, shoulder in week 8, ankle in week 10, almost forces him to miss the entire rest of the season, but then he returns in week 18, 13 carries, 73 yards, and a touchdown, adds on a 6-yard reception. But all told, he only had 51 touches in his rookie season, so kind of tough to evaluate how good he is on such a limited workload while battling through and battling back from injuries. So why am I excited? Well, the Saints drafted an offensive tackle in rounds 1 and 7. They did not draft a single running back in the draft. They did not sign any running back of significance in free agency. So his only competition for touches is a 29-year-old Alvin Kamara, who's coming off by far his least efficient season of his career. And then a 29-year-old Jamal Williams, who's coming off one of the worst seasons in the history of the NFL, somehow only gaining 3 yards per touch. 2.9 yards per carry, 3 yards per touch. I'm not sure I've seen a number that low, only scored 1 touchdown. So there's real opportunity here for Kendre Miller. And I do think the fact that New Orleans did nothing in the draft or free agency should signal to us that he's at least going to get a chance for the role. Does he stink in camp? They look at their roster and they're like, okay, we need to trade for someone like, the running backs have kind of been talking about potential for trades. Najee, Pierce, Miles Sanders. Do they go after someone like that after seeing, okay, we don't love our running back room? Maybe. But remember, he was a high-end prospect last season. They have high hopes for what he can be. He would have probably been the second running back drafted in this season's draft class, and yet he's going after Jonathan Brooks, Benson, Corum, and Lloyd in drafts right now, right ahead of Jalen Wright, even though there is a real chance that Kendre Miller leads the team in carries this season and has the goal line job, makes him a phenomenal pick in the 13th round right now. That is not a round where we're worried too much about risk. Shoot for the upside, and he has the upside to lead the team in carries and be the goal line back. That is significant and is something you should be attacking. Another year 2 running back I like is Tyjae Spears. He was quietly very, very good as a rookie. He was, of course, playing behind Derrick Henry, so no real shot of overtaking him. That's not something he expected to do. They wanted him to do. They wanted him to be a really good number 2, and he was. 4.5 yards per carry on 100 carries, commanded 70 targets on a team that, didn't throw the ball. They were last in pass attempts per game, still commanded 70 targets, efficient through the air, 7.4 yards per reception, 74% catch rate. He didn't test as like some insane athlete coming out of college, but the one metric he really excelled in was burst score. That was on display in year 1. Like, he doesn't have, top end speed to consistently just run away from defenders for an 80-yard touchdown, but he has high-end burst, and that is really important for running backs to just get to that second level. If you've got significant burst, you can turn carries that would have been 5 to 7 yards into 20, and that's something we saw in year 1. This season, of course, Derrick Henry signs with the Ravens, and so you've got 280 carries and 28 receptions just gone. That is a lot of touches. That is 308 touches that are gone now, and they only fill it in with Tony Pollard, right? They draft Dylan Johnson, but we're not expecting touches to go to him. So it is really just Tyjae Spears and Tony Pollard that are going to assume all of those touches. I've been a Pollard truther for his career. I think he's a good running back, but it's tough to argue that he wasn't trash last season. Like, there is a real chance that at this point in their respective careers, Spears is just the better running back. This Titans offense is also going to be much more pass heavy this season. Between the two, I think Spears might just be the better pass catcher. He commanded more targets last season than Pollard has ever commanded in his 5-year career. And again, like I said, the Titans were last in pass attempts per game last season. Dallas was first. So for Spears to command more targets than Pollard, that is indicating he's getting open at a higher rate. He had the 7th highest target share among all running backs last season. And it's just, very, very impressive that he could rack up 70 targets on a team that was last in pass attempts per game. And the kicker here, Spears goes 30 picks after Pollard. So even if you're not totally convinced, you're like, Nick, I get it. Maybe he's better, but I think it's much closer to a coin flip, or I think it's like slightly in favor of Pollard. You're getting a 2.5 round discount after Pollard in taking Spears. If the team has really truly talked about this being a split. And if my guess is that Spears might just be a little bit more valuable in that passing role, I don't know, a 2.5 round discount. Like if you ask me to take one of those two, it's Spears every time. They need to be going much closer. And even if they were going closer, if they were going right next to each other, I honestly think I would prefer Tyjae Spears. Makes him a great pick. But one thing I'll also say is I'm having a difficult time. Like I'm giving extra work to Dillon Johnson and Jonathan Ward because I don't want to rank both of these two way ahead of ADP. Given how good I think this offense is going to be, and it's not going to be like amazing, but I think they're going to be like a solid offense. How pass heavy we know they're going to be. They're not going to be as run heavy as they were last season. And then how many touches are gone, obviously, from, or at least touch share is gone with Derrick Henry leaving last season. There are so many touches to go around where it's like, if I was actually to give these two, like 95% of the workload, they would both project as phenomenal picks. So I'm giving Dillon Johnson work, Jonathan Ward work, other running backs work. Like I'm giving them some touches. There's a lot to go around here. So what I'm saying is there's upside here. Whichever one of these two you think is going to be like the 1A, they are a really good value where they're going in drafts right now because I think it could be Spears and he's going second. I just think it makes him a slam dunk pick. I think you need to be targeting him in drafts. Another year two running back I like is Chase Brown. Now, I'm not going to lie. I was off of Brown last season. I thought Mixon had the role pretty much on lock, that Brown was just a pure handcuff. Wasn't like overly interested in him. I had like some interest, but wasn't super pumped about it. And for the most part, I was right. He had 5 touches through week 12, ended the season with 4 yards per carry, never eclipsed a 30% snap share. But he surprised me last season. He was better than I thought he was, and he did play himself onto the field late in the season, which is not something I thought. I thought he would kind of continue getting random snaps here and there, but he played himself onto the field. He was very productive with his touches. Again, he wasn't like highly efficient overall, and there was really nothing he could do to overtake Joe Mixon, but the fact that they were making it a point to get him onto the field, and the fact that he looked like a better pass catcher than Mixon late in the season, at least in terms of like explosiveness, right? Like maybe Mixon command a slightly higher target share, but you watch some of those screen passes, and Chase Brown, that is his calling card, is explosiveness. And it was very clear they wanted that as an element to their game that Mixon kind of just didn't bring, right? Like Mixon's just not an explosive running back at this point in his career. And so they wanted that player who could turn a screen pass into a 70-yard touchdown like Chase Brown can. Now, I don't want us to get too excited about Brown because I still kind of think that's the player that he is. He is a former 5th round pick. He only has 58 career touches, so it's kind of like the Kendre Miller situation where we just don't totally know. But I do think they brought in Zach Moss to be the lead back. I do think they view Zach Moss as their running back 1. But again, if Chase Brown was earning touches last season over Mixon, well, Mixon is still a better running back than Zach Moss. So we can see that split kind of come a lot closer. Also, Moss is not explosive, right? So it's that same issue where if they want to add explosiveness to the offense, they need that on certain plays. Moss is going to come off the field for Chase Brown. So I think he's going to have a role each week. I think that role will be larger than it was to close last season. And I do think that he can be productive in fantasy because he's a very explosive player, and this offense is obviously very good. So if he can carve out a role that's like 10 to 12 touches a week, I think that's enough for him to be, maybe like a mid to low end running back 2, which is all you can really ask for where he's going in the draft. He's not going in the single digit rounds. And so if you can get him a little bit later and he can turn into running back 2, that's obviously awesome. And let's be honest, like again, I like Zach Moss as a player. He's not some world beater that can't possibly have a bad year, can't possibly bust. There's for sure a chance that Zach Moss is a bust this season. And if that happens and Chase Brown becomes that 1A and he can work up not to 10 to 12 touches, maybe like 12 to 14 every week, sometimes getting 15 or 16 touches, he's going to have a lot of upside. So average outcome is probably around his ADP as that change of pace back. but he has the upside to really push past that. And that's what you want when you're drafting a running back as that running back 37, right? We're already past the running back 3s. We're into the running back 4s. We're looking for that sort of upside, not someone to start for us in week 1. I think that's what Chase Brown definitely brings. And there are outs. Does Zach Moss turn into a bust? Does Zach Moss get injured? Does Chase Brown just turn out to be better than we think? All of those could occur and could really elevate past his ADP. So if you watched this far, be sure to hit the like button and make sure you're subscribed as well, and click the bell icon next to the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any free content. We'll go over year 2 running backs I'm avoiding on Friday, but that, my friends, is in this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.